And now we're going to shift gears again a little bit. We're going to have Paul Heirendt, who's the CEO and president of TradeHarbor, come out and tell us a little bit more about his implementation for TV Everywhere. Paul.
Thank you, Will.
Okay, so before we get into the demo, Paul, give us a little bit of background on what you guys are trying to do for TV Everywhere.
Sure. Yeah, TradeHarbor is a company, it's a web service authenticating people with their voice. We're all unique, our voices are unique, so you can be uniquely identified by what we call your voice signature. So voice signature in two ways. One, like Michael Jordan, somebody from this city, when he plays basketball, everybody knows his signature moves. Matter of fact, the logo is the silhouette of his signature move. Same way, our voices are unique enough that we can be recognized by our voice.
Okay, and what's the benefit of that?
So you can strongly authenticate a person and then interact with them in a new way that you can't using what are today used, for instance, shared secret questions and those kind of things.
Okay, great. You want to show us an example?
Sure. Let me talk a little bit about TV Everywhere,
okay,
right? So, here we go. So, traditionally, cable, and I was in the cable industry in 1969 and 70. So, back then, we were thinking that one wire of the house and that one wire someday would carry everything. And so, traditionally, cable is thought of an account as a household. But today, more and more, we want individualized content. We have more and more screens in the house. So we need to start thinking about not the household as the account, but individuals who have rights in that account. As well as today, we're going beyond the house to other places we are. So enabling that valuable content that we have paid for, just because I'm out of town or the kids are at grandma's or the teen is at a friend's, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to access the content. Mm-hmm. So authenticating the individual becomes the key to, in a very easy way, make a consumer experience very, very excellent. So that's really what we're talking about. So it gets a little convoluted and technical, but the cable industry has worked with cable labs on a specification called Online Content Authentication, OCLA spec.
Yeah.
So we're working with them to show how service providers, and the bottom line of the idea is, as a consumer, I have a relationship with my service provider, and that service provider can authenticate me when they interact with me. And if they're going to provide content, their own content, or content from a partner provider, it's not advancing, they need to send an authorization message. So for instance, HBO Go, if I'm a Charter customer and I also have HBO Go, Charter should be able to say to HBO Go, yes, they're a Charter customer, they've paid for HBO, they should be able to access that content. So then once the authentication is done and that authorization message goes, that content can be delivered. Mm-hmm. So let me show you a practical example by the iPad demo. So yeah, this is a cable company that's fictitious, Evergreen Cable. Yes. So basically I can log in, and I don't know if it's live or not. They have video. So instead of having to type my login, I can type it once and have it remembered, and then sign in using my voice.
Please say college student.
College student.
Now say helicopter pilot.
Helicopter pilot. So
Thank you.
Now that it's authenticated me, I've logged in, and now the service provider can provide personalized content for me. So when I go to the streaming library, I won't see everything that's available. I see my library, my watch list, and things that are recommended for me. So now early window content, valuable early window content like Hobbit, it's not even out yet, so that would be very, very early window. Yeah. But if it was available for early window, I could then purchase it the same way using my voice signature.
Please say tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon.
Now say computer printer.
Computer printer.
Thank you.
So then I would have access to the content.
Tell us those words that you were just saying.
Sure.
Are there significance to those words, or how are they being generated? Are they passwords that have been created?
Yes. The user doesn't have to remember anything. Our service presents a phrase for them to repeat.
Okay.
So very easy for the user, and yet it's also a liveness test, if you will, to make sure that that person in this unique event is responding to our service.
Okay.
Also, those phrases are high in identity characteristics.
Okay.
So we know how to score against those phrases for that particular speaker.
Okay, so the user doesn't need to remember any password or anything like that.
No
They're
passwords,
just being told
pins.
to speak words that the system is telling it to
They
speak.
just repeat what they're asked to repeat.
Okay.
It makes it very easy, very simple.
Cool.
So another layer of service that can be enabled is, for instance, real parental controls.
Yeah.
My kids are older, but back when they were younger, they knew the PIN to our cable box better than I did. They remembered it, I didn't. But now that you can authenticate the individuals within the account, the person responsible for the account can go and set parental controls for the kids.
Okay.
So I could set different parental controls for each child because they're going to be authenticated in. And then I'm authenticated in making that change. So it's not a password or PIN to make that change. You're still authenticated the same way.
Please say laptop computer.
Laptop computer.
Now say bank deposit.
Bank deposit.
Thank you.
So that's it. So they're strongly authenticated and able to access content anywhere, anytime, on any device.
Yeah, very cool. Is there more you want to show us on this?
Sure. So that's for TV everywhere, and that's kind of a single point of value for using our service. But there are also other areas in the relationship between a service provider and the subscription. So if we go back to the slides, for instance, in customer service, we have partner companies. Convergys is one of those, and one of their cable operators that they handle the phone calls for. We did some studies of the authentication portion of those customer service calls. Those calls took anywhere from 45 seconds to more than 2 minutes. So we compared that to having the person authenticated using their voice in the IVR before being passed to the operator, and the savings was down to 9 seconds. So a very interesting ROI for the cable operator, but very high consumer satisfaction because you're able to get into customer service much more quickly and bypass those levels of operators that ask you those shared secret questions, get right to what you want to do and get it done. And in most cases, it goes beyond that in that you can now enable, as a service provider, the consumers to do a lot of things by self-service. Mm-hmm. And most of us today that use the web are more comfortable and would prefer to do things that we know what we want done. We'd rather do that by self-service than have some operator we have to instruct that operator.
So in a sense, it's really more than just for TV everywhere. This is something that could kind of really enhance or change how customer service is delivered.
Sure.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at the cable industry and the relationship between a subscriber and the cable company, there's a whole continuum of services where the consumer interacts, beginning at customer acquisition all the way through field service and repair. We talked about customer service content delivery. And so a unified authentication approach, like the voice signature service, can provide that exceptional customer experience. Enroll once in one touch point and then be able to be authenticated across the whole scope of their interaction with that service provider. So there's a lot of benefits. And so enroll once, use anywhere, access on any device, more convenience, and the individualization for the user.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about how you've deployed so far, or where you're testing it, or how that's what lessons have been learned so far?
Sure. Yeah, we started with voice authentication in 1999, and primarily targeted at financial services and healthcare. So there are some deployments there for very high security. We have some DoD deployments. So voice authentication is starting to be used in lots of settings, and it's just a very convenient way. And as more and more mobile devices are being used to do important things, the data is not going to be resident on the device. That's not a good idea.
Right.
So the data should be in the cloud, and then a user using a device be able to have access to that data.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to what we're talking about with the cable industry. And as you heard earlier, some content is from the service provider, some content is from the other content creators and programmers.
Yeah. In fact, security has been very much in the news recently, right? There have been some very high-profile hacks that presumably would be hard to do if we were using voice recognition.
Yes, there have been some very, very big ones. Citibank, the RSA tokens.
Yeah.
There have been several others where someone goes in with a username and password. It's not that hard to get.
Yeah.
And the approach today for multi-factor authentication, as it's called, is asking shared secrets. Two things about that. We call shared secrets an oxymoron because, number one, if you share it, it's no longer secret.
Right.
And thirdly, these are from publicly available databases, so they weren't secrets to begin with, right?
Right.
They're confirming against the database. But in the Facebook generation, it's completely ridiculous because my kids are on Facebook, my wife is on Facebook, and she's connected to her brother. So anybody that knows my kids or actually goes on Facebook and does any, you don't even have to be a friend to see this data, that she's connected to her brother, so they know what her maiden name is.
Yeah, right.
So in this day and age where so much of our personal information is exposed,
right.
It's not really a valid authenticator or a trusted authenticator.
Right, right. We're just about out of time, but give us your view quickly on TV Everywhere. You know, where are we in the evolution, and how big a contributor do you think this type of voice recognition security will be as TV Everywhere services roll out?
Sure. We were at the Cable Lab Summer Conference last summer, and since then we've been meeting with the major studios and the other content delivery providers, because one of the issues we heard was TV Everywhere is great, and if you can authenticate, that's okay, but the content creators and content providers have to be comfortable that they're seeing the right amount of revenue that comes from legitimate subscriptions. So that's been a very big concern. So we've been meeting with the studios and the other channel content providers so that they can understand what this does provide in terms of security and provide in terms of accountability and make that content accessible.
Right. The concern, of course, from studios is that you start putting stuff up online and there's a hack, it all leaks out onto the internet. Not that it's not already there in some illegitimate cases anyways, but trying to guard against that.
And there's technology today so that the stream of that movie can be audio and video watermarked specifically to a user, and if you have that tied to a strong authentication event, you have accountability for what happens to that content later.
Great.
So it provides, as a consumer, it provides me access to content that they're not willing to share today, but in the future I'll be able to access that content and I'm responsible for that. But more importantly, I think, the portability of, if I buy a DVD at Best Buy and have the rights to that content, I should be able to watch it no matter where else I am. If they can authenticate me, then my rights should transfer to be able to see it in that venue.
Okay, great.
Great.
Paul Heirendt, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting stuff.